Welcome to my Photoshop tutorial on how to create composite images. You know, these creative images where you put together different elements and create a fantastic or a creative scene of some sorts. So while I normally do these in Danish, I decided I wanted to do this in English so that I could reach most of you. And in order to create composite images, there are a number of steps that you need to go through, and I would like to go through them with you step by step so that you can understand how I break down the process and how you will be able to replicate that. So first, and perhaps the most difficult part of creating these images, is the idea. I mean, how will the idea of something that you want to create, how would it be born? And there are some different kind of inspirations that you can go through, the different kind of ways to get inspired. Sometimes it's just an idea that pops up into your head, and sometimes you've seen a movie or seen a animated series of some sorts and felt inspired by something. I have some cartoon artists and drawing artists for fantasy games and stuff like that. Sometimes I get inspired by these, and that kind of leads me to my second step, which builds on the first step, and for me helps me taking a vague idea and creating something actually useful with it, and that is stock images. I've recently come into contact with these Envato that has Envato Elements, and they're actually sponsoring this video. Envato Elements is a site where you can find stock images, but not just stock images. It has all kinds of stock video. It has music, sound effects, everything you need if you want to do your own videos as well. It has graphics, graphic templates, fonts, 3D, and all kind of different stuff that's useful when you want to create stuff. And the thing is that you get unlimited downloads when you are a member of it. So let's dive into what it actually does and why I feel it's interesting. I can say I want an orange sky, and then it just gives me all the orange sky. And let's see, I want something like this, but not exactly this. And it's gonna show me similar photos, and I feel like that's a pretty good way of holding your hand and guiding you through a selection process of images for your photos, because it's the fewest of us that have these clear ideas of exactly what we want. So I decided that I wanted to take you through a process of creating a composite image using these stock photos from Envato. And one of the amazing things about the site is that you can find 3D, and I wouldn't normally think about this thing that's relevant for me. I don't use anything except Adobe Photoshop, but what you can do here is you can like find a dinosaur, then 3D render it on the website, and this allows you to change the angle of how you're looking at it. So you can just say, I want to have it like this, download the PNG of it, do it like this, download a PNG of it. And that solves one of the biggest problems for me as a Photoshopper, is that I always struggle with matching angles of stock photos. This function at this website solves that problem, for me at least. So let's dive into the editing. So now we have the idea and we have the stock images. And what I also do is when I use a site like this, looking for stock images, I also get inspired while looking at the site. I can go through, let's say, photos again, and then I'll be looking at caves, for instance. And while doing this, I might stumble upon something and say, okay, this is cool. I could see myself working with this, like for this, for instance, for this. This is a cool photo that I could see myself using for a different kind of project. But let's start with this. So when I start up a project like this, I always look at my main setting, which is this cave system, and I think what can I do to enhance it, and where will I put my subjects that I'm gonna put in. So I have this kit that I would like to place into my photo, and I won't go over the cutout process too much, because it changes from photo to photo, and to me, learning about composite images isn't about the technique of cutting out objects and subjects. It's more about the creative process and how to mesh things together so they work well. So I'm just going to speed up this process real quick. Alright, when I'm done cutting out a subject, I'm just going to drag him over here. And I'm going to scale him down. If I'm not sure about the exact size of him, if I want to try to scale him down really much and then not sure if I want to keep him that way, I would convert him to smart object. But since I'm not quite done with my cutout here, I'm just modifying my selection here a bit. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to convert him to a smart object, so we can always upscale and downscale him as we please without losing anything. And then I'm going to do a quick selection of the sky here, so we can change that out. There are numerous ways to do these selections. When I can, I always use the quick selection tool because it's so much faster. In this case, I probably could have used the pen tool, but so now we have cut out the sky, and we can put in a new sky if we want to. And I want to. I have some different skies here. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use. I'm going to try some different ones here. Put it down under, and we can just move this around. Can always flip it, see how it looks. This is probably too dark. We could always brighten it up a bit, but I wanted to. Now, what the liberty we have here is actually we can upscale the whole image. So we can always just expand it upwards to see if that adds something interesting to it. And then I can scale this sky a bit better. Say something like this. Good. And I also downloaded one of these dinosaurs, as you can see here. And I wanted to try to input this in our file here. See how this would work. I can always change it up a bit here. See how this works. Could probably upscale him a bit. Okay. So now I have my elements in place, and the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start aligning these together. I'm gonna color correct them, use contrast and lighting to kind of match these together, and then I'm also going to add shadows so that it feels and looks real. So let's start with the boy here. I'll put him into a group so we can keep him organized. Do one layer called shadow, and I always do 2 shadows, at least 2 shadows. So in this case I have, let's see here, I'm going to put a big shadow under his feet here. And I haven't decided from which direction the sun is coming. We don't have any hard shadows on the original photo here, so I mean it would look strange if we were to make a shadow that goes like this. I guess we could. Let's keep it simple like this for now, and we can always come back to it later. There's this golden part of the dust that he was kicking in the original photo. I'm gonna try to fix this now. So let's just do a quick. I'm gonna do a clipping mask for it, so it only affects the current layer. Invert it and then just paint back this selection that we did here. So that exact adjustment only affects this small part of the image. So it looks a bit more natural. Right. Good. So we've added just the most subtle of shadows. That's good. Let's do one more here. So we have 2 shadows. I'm doing this on a layer behind him. Just like this. So we have a small shadow on him now. And let's see here. How is our transitions looking on this? So we can always just modify this a bit. So I'm activating the selection of the background, and I'm just gonna go over some of the edges here, just to make sure it looks decent. I'm gonna contract the selection by, let's say, 2. So go to modify, contract, and I'm just pulling back the selection. I'm gonna invert it just real quick here. I'm gonna match the colors now. I think I'll do another clipping mask on him. Just do a quick hue saturation here. Just gonna turn him down just a notch here. You can see here the before and after, so he matches the color a bit better. I would also want to do that on the background. Let's put it in its own group here. Called it cave. No, it's called background, so we know it's whatever he's standing on. Let's do some curves there to the clipping mask. I'm gonna darken it, and I'm also gonna pull the brightest areas of the image just down just a tad. That much. I'd say something like this. Go before and after. Perhaps not. Okay. And now we go to the T-Rex here. Good. Let's call him T-Rex. We're gonna need some adjustments on him as well. The thing you want to do when you have something in when you're doing these composites, you have to think foreground, middle ground, and background. These are the elements that you wanna. If you wanna create something dynamic, you have to think about this. So what we have here is we have the kid in the middle ground. At this point, we don't have anything in the foreground. We're going to change that in a bit, and we have the dinosaur in the background. So whenever you have something in the background and it's far away, it has less contrast. You'll know this when you're looking at landscape photos and you see something in the distance. Mountains, for instance, they're always less contrasty. We're gonna do that as well with the dinosaur here. So I'm just gonna flatten him just a bit there. So I'm just gonna flatten the whole everything about him here. So it goes from this to this. Oh, he already looks much more in place with the actual setting here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna also add some shadows to him, and we can do this in a new number of different ways. Let's start with no. Let's do like a hue saturation here. Just pull the lightness down like that. And I'm gonna invert the mask, and I'm just gonna paint this back the places I want it with a white brush. Under him, he will of course be darker. Here as well. So at this point I'm modeling him. Making him more 3D. And I'm gonna do the same with the glow. So I'm gonna lighten him as well, do a few saturation here. We can always go back and change this, but let's colorize him. Let's say we want to add this bluish glow from the background. I'm gonna pump it up here like this. I'm gonna look at the brightest point of the image, like this, and invert the mask, and then I'm gonna paint this back. Just gonna do this. Good. So, as you can see here, this is before and this is after, and that really added some authenticity to him and the image, to adding him so he looks a bit more like he's actually in this frame. I'm going to do the same thing with the background as well. And this is I've always done this, but my approach to it changed a bit when I learned about Benny Productions and his amazing video tutorials about his technique. So big shout out to him. And I'm gonna do the same here as well. We just go down to the G-Regs and just copy this, put it in here as well. Of course, delete the layer mask, and then just paint it in here as well. So it's just a minor thing, but it does add something as well. And that's kind of the process of doing these composite images, that even the smallest adjustments like this will have an effect. Do keep in mind that sometimes you just kind of zoom out and look at what you've done, so you have an idea if it's actually adding anything. So let's go back to the dinosaur. I also want to change the colors of him. I don't think he's matching or seeing that great, so I'm going to quick color balance here. Just gonna turn it a bit colder in the midtones there as well. Good. And I think I still want to darken him a bit, so I can always go back and do this. Just lower this guy a bit. Let's see, I'll do one of my old techniques is the paint with light. I just do an overlay and then do a black brush at around 5%. Right. So at this point I'm going to add some things to create some distance and also some dynamics in the image. First of all, I'm gonna increase the background a bit here. The clouds, I'm gonna just pump up the contrast a bit in this, so it feels just a tad more intense. I do want to match the clouds and the foreground a bit more though. So just see if we can just brighten up the highlights just a bit. Like that. I think that's fine. We can always mask out in the areas we don't want it. It's gonna be fine just right here. Good. Yeah. Good. So in front of the T-Rex, I'll add some dust and clouds here. Like he's running towards the kid here, and he's kicking up all this dirt. So we're gonna see if we can find like a neutral brownish color here. Create a new layer. I have some dust clouds here. You can also use like regular stock images for this, but I think this is, I kind of like this as well. Doing like this, and we also want it in front here. Do the dust here. So it also just goes over the cliff as well. And that's kind of a technique to bring layers together. That's creating something that goes over them both. So in this case I'm creating dust that kind of wraps around it. Crank up the opacity just a bit here. So we're thinking he's coming from like this deserty area. And perhaps we should add some desert. Let's see if we can find a desert here in the photos. Okay, so we need something that has the right angle. I think this could probably work. Good. So we're going to put this behind the T-Rex and put it in front of the clouds here. Okay. Good. So now we just kind of had this background. I'm gonna match the colors of this as well. So turn down the opacity. Like the further away something is, the less saturated it is as well. So like we said with the contrast, do it like this as well. And see, we can add some curves to it as well to even this out a bit. Yeah, like that. We should probably add some brightness to it as well here, like with the other parts. So the transition here is a bit smoother. Good. All right. So just add just a bit of something to the background. And the dust thing that we did in the background, we can also do that in the foreground. So in front of the kid here. And when I talk about foreground, if you don't have any any specific thing that would be obvious to put in the foreground, sometimes just adding some dust particles or specks or ember or something like that in the foreground will help creating some dynamic to the photo. So let's do that. We can do some clouds here. Some dust. See how this looks. Yeah, perhaps. Just gonna mask out some of it with the same brush as well. I might actually consider cropping this image just a bit, because there's nothing interesting about that part of the foreground, so we might as well just crop it out. Didn't provide any anything good to the composition, so that's a step you can take in order to improve your composites as well. And now we're gonna be looking at the boy here. So most of the things I've done up until now has been laying the groundworks for doing these composite images. Finding the idea, finding appropriate stock, and putting it all together, and just start to do it step by step. Create shadows, match colors and match contrast. Understand that things further away will have less contrast and less saturation, and things in front will have more contrast. Make sure that whatever light sources are in the back of the image will also affect the things in the front. That's one way of tying it all together. So like we did on the Tyrannosaurus here. So always make sure to tie these images together by creating the glow from potential light sources that are in your image, and creating light sources in your image. Like I have with the, let's say there's a sun in the sky, we could enhance that in a bit. Doing that will also be a way of tying elements together in a composite image like this. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take these things that we've talked about, I'm gonna apply them to the image, I'm gonna speed things up, and we can see how the finished image will look.